Hello everyone, this is Mr. Marr with our final two activities. So we're going to do the tutorial for activity 6 today, see if we can get through that in one lesson. This one is a little complicated. So, a couple things that you're going to need for this assignment. Start with just a blank, project in Soundtrap, no tracks or anything, just starting from scratch. On the Activity 6 assignment, you'll see this folder here, the 4-bar scale guide. So we're going to need both of those things to start this assignment. So for the written instructions, the first step is to download a scale guide. So it's going to work the same way that file downloading has worked in the past. Pick any of these. At this point, you can really pick any of them, and I'll just show you how to adapt to whatever key or scale you pick. You're going to download a scale guide and import it into your DAW. So, let's see. I'm going to pick, for this example, I'm going to pick F major. So to download, right click, then download. And if you do it that way, or click the 3 dots and click download, it should just download as a MIDI file. If it downloads as a zip file, you're going to need to copy it outside of the zip file folder. So, back to Soundtrap, I'm going to import my scale guide here, my F major scale guide. Alright, and now we can see this here. So, the scale guide is this MIDI file. What we need to do is set it so we can use it as a reference, but we don't actually want to hear what's in the scale guide. So if I double click to open this up, we can see the piano roll. I know that we all learned how to use the piano roll in activity 2, also a little activity 3. So you can see this here. And these notes here, all of these gray lines, this is the scale guide. So what that means is this is a set of notes that fit to a pattern. Specifically, the pattern is F major. So if you check your key here, we can see the different keys, C major, D major, so forth. We also have our minor keys. These are musical patterns. And when you write a song, you want to kind of keep the same musical pattern for the most part. That way, everything's going to blend together correctly. So I'm going to set my key to F major just to make sure that everything is all locked in. At the end of this, you might want to add some other loops, so setting your key is important. So next, we're going to need to identify the register. So for this assignment, we're actually going to create a bass line. So a bass is the musical word for a low sound. A bass line is a pattern that a low sound instrument would make. So we're going to identify the register by which number is next to the note, as it says right here. You can see here, these are kind of the labels for the registers. The lower register is usually C0 to C3, middle register is about C3 to C5, upper register C5 to C8. And if you check here on the piano roll, we can see all of those notes that I was just talking about. So that's how you figure out what register your sound is in. So we're going to find scale degree 1 in a low register. So that's the next part. I'm going to start by creating 4 1-bar notes in the piano roll. Start with each note on scale degree 1 in the 0 to 2 register. All right. So to do that, a couple things you're going to need to understand. First is where the bar lines are. Second is also where your scale degree 1 is. So to find your scale degree 1, check your key. So right now it's in F major. Right here is C. So I can actually just use the alphabet to find where F is. D, E, and then F right here. So I'm going to put a note right next to F just above C1. If I click and hold it, it's going to tell me that the note I'm playing is F1. So check this before you start. I'm going to actually just give a little bit of time right now because this is key to very important parts of this, that your note the first note that you program should match your key and your scale, and it should have a 1 next to it. If it has a higher number, it's not going to be a bass line. If it has the wrong letter, it's not going to blend well. So once you have that one note on scale degree 1 of your scale guide, you're going to stretch that out so it is 1 bar long. You might be wondering, how can I tell how long a bar is? You're going to need to check the ruler here up at the top. This shows where each of the bar lines are. And I can actually click and move this around so it can kind of help me show where the bars are. So this is bar 1, stops at bar 2, bar 3, bar 4, bar 5. So each one of these bars needs its own note. So I've got my first one. I press Control C to copy. Click right here, Control V to paste. Same thing, I can just paste 4 notes in a row. Once you have your note written in an octave, actually, you can also just double click on that note and it will create it as well. So for this step, you should have 4 perfectly even 1 bar notes on scale degree 1 of your scale guide. It's going to be different for everybody. Make sure you check your scale, your key, and make sure that your notes are programmed to the right pitch. So we've got that done. Next, you're going to keep 1 note on scale degree 1 and move 2 notes to different scale degrees. One of your 3 notes must be repeated, giving you 1 note for each of the 4 bars. So in the step-by-step video, I mentioned that this is a common pattern. It's a very common musical pattern. If you follow this formula, you're going to get something that sounds like what you might hear on the radio. I can tell you actually that this bass line pattern gets used a lot in rod wave songs, just kind of in different orders. So very popular sound right now and through lots of genres really. So I'm going to keep 2 of these notes on the first note of my scale, which again you find by your key, so F major. I'm going to have it end with F major. The next step is really important. You need to make sure that wherever you put this next note, that is directly across from a scale guide tone. All right. So if I move this note up to here, that would not be correct because it's not across from a scale guide tone. The way that you use a scale guide is you make sure that every single note that you program is directly across from one of these notes. And it's very important. If you get it 1 note off, it's going to sound really, really bad. Some of the worst dissonance is notes that are right next to each other when they're not supposed to be. So what I'm going to do is move this up to another note in my scale guide. So I can check right here. I see this is directly across from this. I can see that that note is B flat 1. If I click this, also B flat 1. So I'm going to move this next note to a different note in the scale. So I might actually want to use this note here. So this is A, and I can see that it's, again, directly across from a scale guide tone. So I've got 2 notes on different notes in the scale. 2 are staying on F. So this is 3 notes over 4 bars. Got 4 bars here, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I've got my 4 notes, but 2 of them are the same pitch. So it's 3 different notes over 4 bars. At this point, you may want to just save your work just to make sure. So again, I'm just going to call this A6. I'm going to save it because it takes a little bit of work to get to this step. If you get to this step correctly, you're going to be fine. So in the written instructions, it does miss 1 step that I pointed out in the step-by-step, which is the sound of the instrument. So if I press play right now, I can start to hear the pattern. I'm going to click instrument and then click the sound patch. So I want the sound patch to actually be a bass sound. So I'm going to click guitar and bass, and then I'm going to pick one of the patches from the bass category. So your sound must have the word bass next to it. Cool. I'll do that. 808s are a good bass sound to use. It's a very popular sound right now. So I've got that set up. I've got my 4 notes programmed, 2 of them on my scale degree 1, 2 of them across from different notes in the scale guide, and now my instrument is playing a bass sound. At this point, we're going to want to make sure that we don't hear the scale guide. So I'm going to click my loop bar. And again, you can turn that on and off by this button as well. I'm going to set it to a 4-bar loop. So now if I press play, it's just going to play on a loop. Cool. So that's like a pretty low sound. I actually can't even, we probably can't even hear that on the speakers. Can really only hear that on my headphones. So I might try like a brighter sounding one. Just. Let's try that. See if that plays a little easier to hear. Cool, okay. That's great. Next, you're gonna create rhythmic variations. So far we've got the notes on the right pitches, but it's not very interesting to listen to. So what we're going to do is shorten all of our notes and then add new notes next to them. The key to getting this correct is making sure that you're always monitoring your horizontal alignment. You always want to make sure that the correct notes are lining up with the correct notes. So I'm going to click and drag to highlight all my notes. I'm going to shrink them down. So now I have just small notes here. And again, the key, the very, very important key to this is making sure that anything I add stays on the same note for that whole bar. I'm going to add a couple more sounds. You can see this right here. That would not work because this is not across from the first note that I started. I want to keep all of these on the same note for the whole bar. So I've got that set up. I'm going to jump to my next one. I'm just kind of click around just to experiment. And again, if you click one that's not on the scale, you want to move that so it's in the scale. All right, so let's see what that sounds like. Cool. That actually sounds pretty good. One other thing you can do to create a variation is use what's called octaves. So an octave is the same note, just higher or lower. In this case, higher. So I'm going to set this right here, this note A1. I'm going to set that up an octave. Right now I'm holding down Shift and pressing the arrow key to move it around. So same note, just a different number. So I moved that one from A1 to A2. You want to make sure that these are still staying on the same exact piano notes. And over here, I'm going to move this one up to F1, 2. So now I have kind of an interesting bass line pattern to listen to. I might want to just add a couple extra notes there. All right. So at that point, you're done kind of what's there for the written instructions. In the step-by-step instructions, it mentions you can make a remix out of this at this point. So since my key is set correctly, I can also set my scale to match my key. You always want to do that. I'm going to say major scale. Since I have a bass line already, I'm going to see if there's a melody that I can add to make this interesting. Since I set my key and scale correctly, this should blend. Okay, cool. I kind of like that. I'm going to add some drums also. That's cool. Cool. And there you go. So that's activity 6. Again, the main part of this, the big challenge, is setting your notes on the right notes in the scale guide, creating those rhythmic variations, making sure that you're still using the same piano note for the whole bar. So nothing should change as far as the pitch name for the whole bar. So that's the case for all of these. So I have a great sounding bass line. At this point, you can save it and turn it in. So, hope that was helpful. Again, I would highly suggest being very, very careful about where you place your notes and just double check every time. Make sure it's across from one of those scale guide notes. And that's it. All right, see y'all later.